theyeshiva.net.
You should know that Judaism has a wonderful, people don't realize, it has a very, generally speaking, it has a good immune system.
Of kicking out what's no good.
Of getting rid of toxicity, yeah, because I'll tell you why. Because, and it's, no, really, it has a good, not always and not with everybody.
Right.
I know that, but generally speaking,
I gotta get rid of my iPhone.
no, if you look at the record of history, history weeds out. And I'll tell you why, because all the texts were written and everything is sourced. You know, somebody says, Halacha, you're not allowed to do this on Yom Tov. We know exactly who said it, when he lived, did he just dream it up, or he was in a bad mood? What's his source? And we go back, that's the value of the Gemarah. You go back all the way. The poskim will live today, to those who lived 200 years ago, to those who lived 500 years ago. Everybody wrote everything. To those who lived 2,000 years ago, the Tanoim and the Amirayim, and ultimately back to Tanakh and Chumash. So the what's the word? The chain is so clear and it's so explicit, it leaves much less room for manipulation and distortion. You can't have in the Jewish world somebody coming up and say, there's a gzeira that God doesn't want. What, when, where? Torah loy b'shamayim. So it's really a very wonderful thing. People don't realize the value of that. Every halacha, every chumrah, and that's why it's important to know this is a chumrah, this is a hiddur, right? You're not allowed to look. A guy looks at wine, you're not allowed to drink it anymore. Is there a source for it? There's a source for it. Is it halachic prohibition? Absolutely not. It's a stringency, and we know exactly where it comes from. It comes from a medrash called Medrash Talpiyos, quotes a particular author, and the Shalah brings it. And the Shalah generally was a very, very pious man, and he was, there was room for chumrah, room for stringency. So there's a very good immune system in that sense. You know, Kitnius,
interesting what
Shruya.
What was originally about Peh.
That's why they did it.
You're claiming is...
No, very good question. Why was it also the right on Torah Shabbat Peh? The answer is, when you had Jews living together in a cohesive space in Eretz Yisrael with their own political and spiritual and military independence, right? On the contrary, then there's a value not to write on Torah Shabbat Peh, because it maintained extraordinary vibrancy.
Right. It's a living organism.
Everything was a living organism, number one. And number two, there could be less arguments and distortions because there's a living author to speak to. You're not going to a books. You could see the same line of Gemarah can have 4 different interpretations. You don't have because we don't have the living teacher. Right. And number 3, the responsibility on the teachers was much deeper because they knew if they're not going to teach, it's going to be forgotten forever. That was a tremendous quality.
That was Rabbi Yehuda Nassi's argument.
But no, Tilhim. But then he saw, with the dispersion happening, the opposite would happen. Right. The opposite would happen. When you have a cohesive unit, you have the infrastructure to be able to maintain integrity, even verbally, even when it's all verbal. Once you have a dispersion, now any charlatan, right, is going to get up and hijack the religion. So he wrote everything down. Fakert. He knew exactly what to do. Okay, but that itself we have then. So that's why there's no such thing. A Rav got up, he's in a bad mood. He makes an issa. Where, what? It happens, but it doesn't really happen. In other words, it happens for people who are gullible, but people who know the system of Judaism knows it doesn't work that way. And Halacha itself says, a rabbi says a psak din, you come and you could say, Mehechan dantuni, just show me your source. That's a very powerful component in Yiddishkeit. And it's been that way from the beginning, and it's a very from the beginning, from when Torah Shabbat Peh was written.
I read recently
he thought the mission...
That he, never would he have thought there would have been a Gemarah after he already was Masada.
And did the Gemarah think there's going to be thousands of pages of Rishonim and Acharonim and Shalsat Shuvas? No, but it's a very beautiful experience. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to... No, think about it. We learned today. You're not allowed to invite a non-Jew to your house on Yom Tov for a meal. Who came up? Rabbi Shua ben Levi decided that way because he didn't like his neighbor? Rava decided he didn't like his neighbor? Right? Am I allowed to cook for my dog on Yom Tov? No. Why? What? When? We know exactly. And we know that there were opinions, and we know where the pasuk that comes from. The mechanism is very clear. So the immune system is a very powerful one. It's a pretty healthy one. Judaism has, in this sense, I think, I don't know what I see, that it has a very healthy, relatively speaking, a very healthy immune system. That's why Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, right, all these various forms of Judaism, ultimately they cannot hijack the Jewish world completely.
Everyone's dead.
Yeah, why? Why is that? Why is that? Because of the texts. Because we have a Shulchan Aruch. And it's a very powerful reference point. It's unbelievable. There could be arguments in the Shulchan Aruch, always. There could be 100 different views. No, but the Shulchan, what is the Shulchan Aruch? The Shulchan Aruch is basically the same concept. He basically traced every halacha and all the way back. What does the Mishnah say? What does the Gemarah say? What do Monsey poskim say? The majority. There were, of course, always. You had, first of all, you had the tzdukim, you had the kroyim, the Karaites wreaked havoc. Yeah, the Rambam had to deal with the Reb Sadia Gaon. I mean, there was some huge issues. Reform is only is contemporary.
1700s, no?
Late 1700s. But that's why it succeeded tremendously. I mean, Western Europe and so forth.
Well, it was the opening up of
but
the ghettos, really.
But because of the texts, it couldn't destroy it. You couldn't really reform Judaism. You could reform your congregation and your household and your community, but not the religion. This was the power of writing, no question. And not just writing, the system, having everything, see everything clearly. Was this made up? We just made up that on Shabbos you don't do muktzah? Because we're trying to be frum and orthodox, we just made it up. Where did it come from? Everything. So it's that allows, I think, for a pretty good organism, a healthy organism.
What about
Listen.
but it's involved also.
They once asked a Chinese politician what's his view of the American and French Revolution. He said it's too early to tell. But that itself, listen, again, for somebody who's not educated and doesn't read, yes, you could indoctrinate people with anything. We know that. Right. And some religions do that and unfortunately do it very successfully to a point of, well, you do have to understand that there's different groups. Not everybody, some people are very open. They read, they allow their children to know what's going on in the whole Jewish world, to know the distinction between Shulchan Aruch and just a cultural, sociological phenomenon. There is a big difference between the two.
Yeah, but if you walk to your...
Well, that's why they come here.
Is their way or the highway?
That's why they come here. I don't know if today you could hide much if somebody really wants to know. Especially with the internet, I don't think you can hide much. So that itself, somebody says, okay, women are not allowed to do this, men are not allowed to do this. We know what's the source. Is this your takana? Fine. You're a rabbi, you're making a takana for your community. Okay. So it has a genre. Everything has a category. It has an erech, an entry. Dairaisa, the rabbanon, minhig, chumri yisera, hidur mitzvah, takana, shtik, meshagas, abuse. We have labels. We have labels. This is real. This is somebody's invention. This is a bad dream. Right? This is a takana. Okay, it's a takana. Great. That's very clear. It's not it's very hard to distinguish between that.
And all these chibras for Pesach.
Again, everything has a genre. Where did it come from? Why? What? When? Yeah. Some of them are Yiseidasim B'Hararei Kodesh. Have very good sources, very holy sources. Some of them are Chumri Yiseiris, right? What's the vart? They say it from different people that a woman once, she was stressing out before Pesach. So one of the Gedolei Yisrael told her, remember two things. Dust is not chametz, and the children are not the carbon Pesach. So that's that. So people could say, in Russia they had chumras also because of the types of foods they had. But that itself, you have to know. You have to be able to tell this is how my grandmother did it, and that's why I'm doing it. Yeah, it's our family tradition. Doesn't mean it's a biblical prohibition. No, and if somebody does it differently, I'll tell you a very, very. I think it's a very telling insight. Matzah shruya, gebrockt, right? It's a very interesting thing how Gebrachts developed. But here again, it didn't happen yeshma. We know exactly. We know the Rishonim who talk about it, right? Reb Shlomo Kluger in Shulchan Aruch has a makar in Shas for Gebrachts. He has a makar in Shas, but there are other interpretations in that same Gemarah. We know how it evolved exactly. The real big stringency in Gebrachts happened because of the Balatanya. In his Shals, he wrote a big tshuva about it, and he explained halachically why there is a serious room for chashash, why it's a serious thing. So the Hasidim almost universally accepted it, or probably not almost, but universally, and it's a very serious thing, because that tshuva of the Balatanya, and he explained why he suddenly writes about it. Why didn't everybody write about it for 2,000 years? And he explained that in his times, basically in the late 1700s, early 1800s, they changed the way they baked matzah. So that was very interesting, fascinating phenomenon. He explained how it happened. He wrote before 20 years ago and since 20 years ago. One issue, also commercial matzah bakeries, yes, that's already in our times.
Do you think a thing like this, even though...
So here's an example. He writes everything, and he writes why you could be lenient, why you could be stringent, who would be makel, who would be machmer, why he's saying you should be machmer, even though according to some poskim it's completely not an issue, but he says, kedai, these poskim to be saimach and them to be machmer. So by Chassidim, it became a very serious thing. But when you read the literature, you know exactly the genre it fits into. To come and say that it's, a prohibited thing and a person is eating chametz, it's ludicrous. You don't know what you're talking about, right? A serious posek, a serious man of Allah, knows you don't speak like that. It was the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe. His name was Rabbi YY Jacobson of Lubavitch, the Rebbe Rayatz. He passed away in 1950 in New York. So... he came to Brooklyn. He escaped the Nazis. He escaped war, so he came in 1940 to New York. He settled in Crown Heights. So he was once sitting by the Suda, one of the Sudas of Pesach. Upstairs, he had a house on the second floor of 770 Eastern Parkway. And in Chabad, they're very machmer on Gebrachts, extremely, because the tshuva of the Balatanya. Extremely machmer on Gebrachts, more than in other circles. Not even water, but also avocado and wine and fruit juice. Yeah, even though it's not mamish water, but get it wet. Besides Achron Shal Pesach. Besides Achron Shal Pesach fakert. Then the Mahadrin Gebrach. That's another interesting thing. Right. Okay, but... So, there was a Yid sitting by the Suda, and he wasn't from that... He wasn't a chassid. And he was there by the Suda, I guess. I don't know who he was. And he dipped his matzah into wine. He dipped his matzah into wine or into the soup, whatever it was, into something red, either vinaigrette, the beets or the wine. He was at the other side of the table. So the yeshiva boys that were there got very, they got very excited and emotional. How do you do this? You're sitting at the Rebbe's table. You can't, lichboshes hamalka imi baboyis, you come into the house. So there was a whole, I don't know if they used those words, but that was the notion. It got very hectic over there at the other. So the Rebbe Rayatz turned to one of the people sitting there and asked what the commotion is. They told him, this guy, chutzpah, he dips the wine, and this, they're telling him you don't do this. So the Rebbe looked up and he said, Beser aroite matzah v'aroiten ponim.
There you go. Oh. That's right.
The Hearst?
Yeah.
This is a principle to remember in life. Beser aroite matzah v'aroiten ponim. You understand, no, Moshe? No. Better a red matzah, a gebrachts matzah, than a red face, than embarrassing somebody, humiliating somebody, causing them to blush. Why? Because this is an isser, hamal b'm pnei chavere barabim. Gebrachts, gewaltige inyan, but it's a chumrah, it's a hidur. So you have to know the genre. And then you're embarrassing somebody in public because they're not doing your chumrah. So you're doing an isser min ha-Torah. They say that B'Sol Salanta, the founder of the Musa movement. So his Talmudim went to bake matzah for him. B'Sol Salanta, B'Sol Lipkin was his name. So they asked him if he has any special instructions. People with baking matzah get very, very...
Nuts.
I don't want to say the word nuts. I don't want to say the word OCD. I don't want to make it like a mental challenge, but they get very nervous, very anxious. And there's good reason. Let's face it. The biggest chash chametz is matzah, right? Not macaroons. The thing that's most likely to be chametz is matzah because you're dealing with minutes. Yeah. So they were going to the matzah bakery. So they went to the bistro and they said, "Do you have any special chumras, any special things you want to tell us before we bake matzah?" He says, "Yeah. At the matzah bakery, the women knead the dough, and everyone screams, 'Schneller, schneller, fast, fast, fast!' They scream, 'Stop, no, let's go, let's go, let's go!' Banging their hands, it's time to go into the oven." He says, "I'm going to ask you not to do it." Why? Because the woman who kneads the dough is an almana. She's a widow, and she's a broken person. And when you scream at her faster, it's going to break her spirit. So that's going to be I'm going to ask you not to do it. So in other words, what was he saying? He's saying for you to be machmer, to have the best matzah in the world, sometimes you're over on 8 lavim. Almana loy sa'anun. You have to be sensitive, right? How you treat workers, how you treat people. But the main thing he has mohodah de kamatzah. At what expense? He was over on Isam and Atayra. He was over on Isudim and Divim. But he was Makayim as Chumrah. So that's very helpful when you know everything has a label. What is it? Listen, you have the other extreme. The other extreme is a person who's apathetic to halacha, and they just say make everybody feel good. So we're not gonna. You have to. This is coming from Yiras Shamayim. It's not coming from Kalus Rosh. You understand? You have a person who's a Kal Rosh. They don't care. So if it's comfortable, you just knock away the halacha. We're not talking about that. Oh, you told me that Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach from Yerushalayim, somebody came to him with a shaila. It's a very interesting question. There was a bar mitzvah bach who was learning for the haftarah. And it wasn't easy for him to do. It took him a long time. He couldn't do the parsha, but he did the haftarah. And after a long time of preparing, he succeeded. He knew the haftarah, was very excited. And then they realized the week of the bar mitzvah that this Shabbos, they're going to be reading a different haftarah. It was one of those parshias where you don't do the regular haftarah, so the haftarah teacher didn't realize it. He taught him the wrong haftarah. There was no time for him to learn the new haftarah. The question is what to do. So they asked Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, so he paskined that they should read the wrong haftarah. Right. They should read the haftarah that the boy prepared, not the regular haftarah that he was supposed to read on that Shabbos. So Shabbos morning, early in the morning, one of his talmidim saw him walking out of his regular way. He lived in Shari Chesed, and he was walking to another neighborhood. So he asked him where he's going. So he said he's going to that bar mitzvah, to that shul. He said, what, a relative? No. I said, why is he going there? So I told him the story, and he said he knows that there's going to be some guy in the shul who's going to start screaming and hollering and saying you're not allowed to. And they're not going to trust. He won't trust the gabbai that Reb Shlomo Zalman paskind. He won't trust that you made it up. So that's why he's going himself to daven there. So I've heard from Simcha bin Mapshische, La'olam yehei adam yirei shamayim baseiser, right? We say in the morning. So he said, you have to actually say, La'olam yehei adam. And then you could be a yirei shamayim. La'olam yehei adam, a person should always be fearful of heaven, even in hiding, even privately, not only in public. So he says, you have to read, La'olam yehei adam. The first thing is a person has to be a adam, a person, a mensch. And then you could be a yirei shamayim baseiser. If Yirei Shamayim means you're not a mensch, then it's a question on the Yirei Shamayim.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.